Gavel. Thank you very much indeed to everyone for coming. You can't see it on screen, there's a huge audience here. Just to remind everyone, this is being recorded and is going live on YouTube. So if you want to watch an edited YouTube short of us later on, you probably can't. Any apologies for absence? 2154. Councillor King is not here. We're happy to accept his apologies.
Most definitely.
Fantastic. 2155 declaration of interests, pecuniary, others, etc. Councillor Chapel.
It's one of those occasions. 216402, because it's a letter from Batford Parish Council, which I sit on and drafted the letter. 216203, because it's the museum constitution. I'm a trustee of the museum, so are certain others around this table.
So we've got two more declarations of museum interest.
And Paul was the other one, Mr. Councillor King, so he's not here today. So.
Who doesn't need to?
That's the four of us.
And where am I now? Lost it. 216306, chat application for a grant, because I'm trustee of chat.
Oh, I did so myself.
Isn't it?
No, we're all...
Anyone else? I declare an interest that I live on St Peter's Road, because I always do, and I declare an interest, and I know two of the people who are here to be co-opted this evening in some way, shape, or form. It won't affect my judgment. Okay. Any other declarations of interest in any shape or form? Fantastic. Thank you very much indeed. A proposition to approve and sign the minutes of the annual meeting. Should it be the annual meeting?
I think so.
Sorry?
Should it be the annual meeting or just the normal meeting?
Yeah.
No, it shouldn't be that.
No. So the 20th of July meeting, I think most of the issues that have arisen are on the agenda tonight. There was one that struck my mind, the sewage on St Christopher's Drive again, which I don't think we've heard anything from, have we? So we should probably keep chasing that. Anything else from anyone else? No. Are we happy? You're happy?
I'll propose.
You propose, anyone to second it? Are we happy that I'll sign it? Everyone happy? Lovely, thank you very much. Just give me a second, because there's so many sheets. I'll give you a notice, my signature is always different. It keeps counterfeited on their terms. Yeah, it's each one's a GDPR itself. Right, thank you very much. To consider and approve co-option of councillors to Angle Town Council, item 2157. We're lucky to have two people who are volunteering, Red and Jamie, who are over there. Thank you very much for volunteering. We've had some text from you about where you'd like to stand, which is great to see. Does anyone wish to question them further? In any way, shape, or form. Councillor Chapman's keen.
It's not so much a cross-examination, but I would be interested to know why you didn't say the election in May and now put yourselves forward.
For me, I have a 1-year-old daughter, so I have to say in May last year, I was a little bit overwhelmed by new parenthood, if I'm perfectly honest. So that is why this has actually suited me better coming in at this point.
Yeah, from my point of view, I don't mean to offend, but I didn't. My neighbour is Councillor King, and he, my wife actually signed his form to become a councillor, and that's actually the first time I even heard about Angle Town Council. So since then, I've spoken to him various times, and yeah, become engaged interest. That's I didn't know essentially.
Cool. Very good reason. Sounds entirely plausible. It's in charge of communicating. It's not. Any other question? Richard.
Right. The gentleman with glasses, forgive me for not remembering your name.
That's fine.
All we were told about you was that you were a neighbour of Councillor Paul King, who says that you live very well indeed.
Yes.
And you live in Angle. Could you please elaborate a bit on this? Tell us a bit about yourself. For example, if I can suggest a few questions you might like to address.
Uh-huh.
How long have you lived in Arundel? What is your occupation or profession?
Yeah.
What are your hobbies and your interests?
Okay, to answer that, I've lived in London for about 3 years now, with my now wife. It's actually our second wedding anniversary today, so I'm here. You may or may not recognise, I work in the co-op full time, the local co-op, so you may not recognise me from there. As in terms of general interest, literature and books are my main hobby. I worked for I think a year and a half of the 3 years I've been here at the Oxfam bookshop, that I love, but unfortunately can't got the time now. But so literature and film, art, that sort of thing are my hobbies and general interests. My mum inspired me to have an interest in politics from a young age. She talked about politics around the kitchen table, much like the Kennedys. Unlike the Kennedys, as far as I'm aware, my mum was never involved in bootlegging. But I hope that gives you the list.
Thank you. No further questions from me.
Thank you.
Brilliant, thank you very much. Anything from anyone else? That's quite a lot of information.
No, we've got them.
Presumably we need to vote on this. So
Yeah.
this will be exciting. Do we vote yes? We'd like to co-op them? Is that the formula?
Yeah, I mean, you can do it both together, so if somebody
Yeah.
proposes it,
Are
second.
we, David, do you want to propose both?
Both of them to get good, please.
Are we both, everyone happy that both Rep and Jamie join the council?
I'll second.
Yeah, we've got all the second, thank you very much indeed.
Anyone, thank
Do
you.
please come and join in.
Sorry, who seconded that? Yeah, I thought, and David, yeah.
Can I get a round of applause?
Sorry? And then I'll register.
Rebecca, you're about to get nabbed to leave.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I'll defend you for 30 seconds, but it's not going to work so long. Wait till she signed. David, she might run away. She might leave.
Get enough trouble to start.
They won't vote, but they can join you.
Right.
Your register of interest form,
Yes.
I'll email it to you tomorrow.
Okay, fantastic, thank you.
And I'll talk, I'll say what the next stage is.
Right, so just to crack on, Emma, don't you say that Jamie and Rep can't vote?
Yeah, they're just sort of attending.
They've got their training wheels on. Well, thanks very much indeed on behalf of the residents of Arundel for joining.
Yeah.
Bring your huge amounts to us. So 2158, public participation. We have two, hopefully quick presentations. Transition Arundel are up first. I think it's on the screen. We've had some of this to look at.
The little mouse that's on there, you can just scroll down.
I wouldn't worry about the slides, they're just background. I'd like to thank you for giving us a chance to do this. Slightly intimidating being asked to do my entire CV at Adley.
It was impressive.
Well done, sir. Very, very good try. We're just going to have a little bit about why we think local councils are now in a position to start taking the lead on adaptation and mitigation of climate change. The evidence is pretty overwhelming now. The last IPCC report was saying things like it's absolutely certain that humans were causing this. The government have certainly responded to this, and you can see some of the things around Europe, floods in Germany and stuff like that, and scientists are beginning to be able to say these things are more likely to be associated with human-caused climate change than not. And so the government has adopted a net zero target to be achieved by 2050, and it established the CCC, Committee on Climate Change, which is as an advisor, which has been producing regular reports. Most recently, the two that I think are important are the 6th carbon budget. You may now move that down, and that has got an incredible amount of background research on fairly obscure things like chlorofluorocarbons, but also some fairly basic things like transport and housing, which do apply locally. And it makes a really important point. Success will now come not by regulation of the electricity industry, but by more of that combined with local personal choices and decisions. And that's why it's a bit mixed up about local government and local authorities versus town councils versus parish councils. But, you know, we are at the level at which, thank you to the community for all of you, you can engage with real people in real places on real decisions, and you have an influence over decisions at a higher level, like Northamptonshire County Council. No, Northamptonshire Council. Sorry, yes. And at a local level, there are various local authorities. I'm not sure whether Northamptonshire have done this yet, have declared a climate emergency, and most of them have then said we will be carbon neutral by 2030. Well, frankly, pull the other one, nobody's going to be carbon neutral by 2030, but an emergency with those sorts of ambitions says we'll get ahead of the game. And so the real question is, what can we do here? And I think firstly, and we've given a bit of literature which sort of signals what we think it is, there are elements in both the adaptation plan and the 6th carbon budget plan that are absolutely applicable locally. We'll come on to 3 things that we think it is. Secondly, if Northamptonshire have declared climate emergency, and I think they have, we should keep them at their words, and our responses to them about the sorts of things we want them to do in Oundle should assume that they mean they're going to go to carbon neutral. And the little example I give is the Vestry Homes thing. We've shared some views with that with some people around the table. If those houses aren't carbon neutral, then they shouldn't be built, because you're merely imposing costs on the first residents by the time they come to sell it, because they will regulate how energy efficient and so on those houses will be by the time the typical person first comes to sell them. So if the builders don't do it now, it'll be done at greater expense by retrofitting by the first bit. And you guys represent those people essentially, because they'll be part of our community. And then thirdly, I think we do need to have a positive programme for engaging the community to help people not be frightened by this, but to see this as a positive opportunity to enhance the quality of life in Oundle. So I'd like to finish with just a few sort of things that we might do, starting with transport, given that you're in the middle of a consultation about transport. We really do need to champion electric vehicles, and most institutions in Oundle, if you think this is worth doing, need to accelerate the rate at which they get rid of their old vehicles, Oundle School, and replace them with electric vehicles, and then look at ways of generating public charging infrastructure, particularly on street, as in Rock Road, and to make sure that we start generating our own energy so we can charge our own vehicles and become part of a wider solution for perhaps a local network. And I would urge you to look at Woking Borough Council's positive plan for climate emergency. They've got things like this in. And then your it sort of mixes the transport bit, but getting people out of cars and going around by bike, do look at changing gear. It's the government policy on encouraging active transport is seriously bad. Next one. Buildings, I mean, clearly we can encourage more people and help people to switch to zero carbon energy generators. But I think the important bit is to champion energy efficiency in buildings, including the new ones we've just said. But I've had a look at the list of energy performance certificates. There's quite a lot below C, and there's quite a lot that don't even have an energy performance certificate. I think quite shortly they're going to get to the point where you can't sell a house without it. You certainly can't rent a house without it being a PPC. So we need to positively develop partnerships and programmes and help people get grants and move these in. And I think there'll be quite a big community support for helping us get it. And as long as it's not seen as you just got to spend money, but you work with the neighbours and help move things forward, I think that'd be something that the town council can facilitate and use its sort of positioning power. And the final slide, to reassure people, and essentially it leads on, you can't do this without building community capacity, and we need to just explore ways in which we can do it. And there's a good network of community organisations around the place who would like to work with the council, but it needs council leadership. So thank you very much, and I'm sorry it's a bit of a rush, but and I do hope you enjoy reading the stuff we left you. Thank you very much.
And thank you very much indeed for your time. Any questions from anyone? No? Brilliant. Thank you very much indeed, both Mark and David, for your time. And now, linked to that, can I just quickly, Helen, Northland's has done climate emergency, isn't it?
Yes, so for those of you who don't know, I'm Councillor Helen Harrison. I am one of your three Northlands ward councillors. Hopefully you know that Oundle ward covers not just Oundle but 20 villages. And I'm a member of the executive, so I'm the member for the executive member for health, adults health and wellbeing. And you'll be pleased to know that we have an executive member for climate change and environment. So her entire role is about making sure that we drive through the very reforms and changes that you are talking about. And in our very first full council meeting, we declared a climate emergency. Now, I was very interested in something that you said, sir, because you're the first person who I've ever heard standing up to campaign for net zero, who's actually said that it's not achievable by 2030, because every single other person I've ever heard has said that we need to pledge this by 2030. What we've actually done is said that we're going to work up a plan, which is going to come to full council as soon as we have worked up, with a realistic, achievable goal of when we can achieve net zero, because we believe that we shouldn't overpromise, we should deliver what we actually can. So just plucking 2030 out of the air because it sounds good and that's what everybody else is doing, we don't feel is the right thing for a responsible council to do. But I can absolutely pledge to you that we're, this is, number one priority for us. And I would also, lastly, sorry to go on too long, but I would also like to say one of the things that we are doing, because we're a new council, is not only with climate change, but also with inequality and with health and well-being, is when we're developing policy, is we're starting from the point of how can we use this policy to improve health and well-being, improve the environment, improve inequality, rather than looking at it once the policy has been developed, which is how things traditionally work, and you go, let's do an impact assessment, which by the time you've got to a policy developed, you're not likely to change because an impact assessment says it's detrimental or not. So we actually are trying to look at it the opposite way around, where we actually build how do we improve from the outset of our policy development.
Thank you very much indeed. Similar but different reflective field.
For those who don't know me, my name is Paul Evely. I'm chair of the Field Group, also a chairperson for the Annual Business Association, and to partake in the Annual. It's the introductions. I just want to give you a quick update on our vision from last time. Clearly, we set out, and you guys have actually written to NNC and asked whether or not we could be granted back Flatland Field. Now, I believe that that's coming up next in the agenda, I think. But I think you've probably already seen the response, I believe, from NNC. Was that correct? Mm-hmm. Yeah. I had it verbally via Annabelle. Basically, NNC have said, okay, we understand your request. We're going to put a process in place to enable us to review requests such as yours, and that process will involve you presenting a business case, and we'll probably invite other local community groups to make a similar bid for similar package of land or access that the NNC own. So the plan that we promised that we would look to put in place from last time, we're now actively working on developing that planning process. We booked out this room, I think, for a number of sessions, hopefully to take place during October. We're also going to go across and see Kettering Green Patch and understand how those guys feel about doing their development of the Green Patch in Kettering, and understand how Groundworks, which is a charity set up to help and assist people do that sort of thing, have actually managed to help that take place. So what can we learn from them? Maybe they can help us. Certainly, one of the things that we were discussing yesterday when we were talking about, I think, as well, what about the management and how do we make all that happen? Because that's a critical thing is, okay, we get it, we've got to change it, and we've got to make it happen. We've got to make a variety of things come to fruition if our vision is going to be delivered. In the meantime, we've also, we did say we would look to see if we could have events on the field in the meantime. We've had to curtail that for this at this point in time. We did put a request for dog and poo things on there, and then NNC came back and said, well, at the moment it's viewed as private property, so and we don't view it as a public park, so we're not going to install dog and poo things. So the reality is, where we've had events that we thought would require public liability insurance, we don't have permission to do that at this point in time. For the Platinum Jubilee Party next year, which I think is that coming up on the agenda?
Well, it's part of the sort of response press.
Yeah.
General.
What we agreed when we had a discussion with Annabelle on the phone was that we thought what we would do is we'd still apply. We'd actually apply formally for them to grant us permission, irrespective of what happens to Flatton Field, to hold the Queen's Platinum Jubilee Party on the field. Just to highlight that, yes, we are keen on putting events on the field, but we thought at this point in time it wasn't very good to go for a more general public request whilst they're considering the proposal that we're going to create. Also creating a stakeholder communications plan, the French lady here, and other members of the group. Support being sought really from the Blooming Oundle members at the moment. I'm phoning around to talk to people about this planning process. Key thing is that many hands make light work. The more people we can get engaged to help make that happen, the more likely we are to produce a good plan, and the more likely we are to actually be able to deliver it. That's the main thing. So any questions?
Any questions from anyone?
No, just to talk about the Jubilee.
Come on to that.
Yes.
So, well, so there's nothing that you want to ask of us at the moment? That was just an update?
I think the key thing is your support. I mean, clearly, from the last meeting, I think we have your support. We've tentatively booked out the room for meetings here, which is important for us. And I think we're going to ask, whether or not you would, the key thing for the party is that we need to make a formal application, and we need somebody to take on the public liability, is what we discussed in our meeting with Annabelle. And that needs to be considered by your good selves, really. So that's the decision for you to make, whether or not you would like to formally invite, ask for the usage of the field, and whether or not you would then be able to take on the public liability, because if we're going to invite several hundred people onto the field, clearly we have to run that in a safe way, basically. So
we can consider that under the next.
Thank you.
Give us the right to vote on it.
Okay.
No other questions? Brilliant. Thank you very much indeed to both groups, and thanks for all you've been doing and keeping this stuff bobbing along for us as well. 2159, consideration of requests from interested parties, nothing. 2160-01, town matters, to receive a response from North Northampton Council regarding transfer of ownership of Flat Field. We work as suggested about a Jubilee field being created, and they've said they're going to put a process in place, as Paul just said, and we have a chance to consider next steps. The key thing seems to be that we'll follow the process with interest and enthusiasm and much excitement and all support of North Northampton, etc. And there are two more points that are raised in the document. One is our Jubilee groups working together. I know David and Paul and Jerry can work with all of that and communicate. And also whether we would formally like to ask North Northampton if we can have the Jubilee event on the 5th of June. On Fletcherfield. Any questions or comments, David?
Nothing, it's nothing to do with that, Julie.
No.
It's just, I think, listening to Fletton Group, have we actually formally shown our support for Flettonfield as a formal letter or something formally that we are behind whatever they do? I know it sounds like a weird question, but we've discussed it a lot. They know that we like them, but have we formalised this in some way? So they have
Jerry,
I think it's covered in the minutes of meetings.
Yeah.
I think we have.
Perhaps I've just moved that.
Yeah.
I mean, just for the new council as well, I think that you know that I am our link to transition, moving Arundel and Fletcherfield kind of sort of comes under one sort of umbrella because it's a lot of the same people that are involved. And I'm regularly attending discussions with Paul and others who are.
So Jerry's, you're formally our link.
So I'm formally your link. I mean, I'm conscious that I can't represent the council at it, so I'm there to advise and to feed back to you guys. But obviously, if the council wants to approve, but yes, I would propose that the next steps are that we include planning for the Platinum Jubilee celebrations on the field on the 5th of June, and that is part of the.
The last section there is
Just a quick question.
Yeah, I'll just answer, the 4th is a Saturday, 5th is a Sunday. I don't mind which.
The weekend of the 5th of June.
There's also the Monday, isn't there?
Well,
I think there's an extended bank holiday, isn't there?
Yeah, you've got the Friday off
Can I
and
just
then the
quickly-
Monday.
Hang on, Jerry's got.
Can I just quickly read from the Palace's press announcement, which says, extended bank holiday, Thursday the 2nd to Sunday the 5th, and then there's various things different days, so birthday parade on Thursday the 2nd,
That's a Thursday.
Jubilee beacons, but Friday, Thursday, Thanksgiving, Saturday, Derby at Epsom Downs, Platinum Party at the Palace, but the focus is on the Sunday for the big Jubilee lunch. So every year since the idea of going to 2009, the big lunch has encouraged communities to celebrate their connections, get to know each other a little bit better, coming together in spirit of fun and friendship. In 2022, the big lunch will bring the students to the heart of every community. So I think, realistically, it's something that we all at Palace, we all get together and have a party on the Sunday.
Big lunch on Sunday.
Is that the 5th?
So
It's
you're
on the
the
5th of June, yeah.
So Jerry, you're formally suggesting that we ask North Northampton for that. And David, you seconded that?
I'm definitely certain of that.
Are we okay to vote on that? The process we asked North Northampton for permission to have a party on the 5th of June.
Yeah.
So, yes.
Pleasantfield.
On Fletcherfield.
What should that go to?
Well, we've got to work out what we're doing, but the idea is that Flettonfield are happy to.
Anyone against it? Anyone standing?
We have a parade. I don't know what we're doing.
I'm not standing in there, I make an observation that we've got this memo that is about from George. And it says, we seem a bit cart and horse, should we not be writing a business plan saying we want to use it? As well as saying we're going to go and ask NNC that we're going to use it in June. Because it says, proposed transfer to provide a business plan setting out its objectives and intended use of the site, for the site, importantly, how we deliver these objectives. Well, my view is that we need to write a business plan that we present. I know it because they're saying
Tell me two separate issues. This is transfer of the field itself.
yes, it is, but part of the business plan covers us having intended use of the site. We're saying we're going to have a use for the site and we're going to use it in June. We're now September going into October. It's only 9 months till June. These things happen. They're saying June 22. Let's let's start that process with a business plan. Part of that business plan will be, we've got the Queen's event to think about, and we want to, that's our marker to say it's being used by the
Well,
church.
I think what you said was correct. They are slightly different, I think.
Well, I get that. I get that.
The business, Paul mentioned the fact that we've got meetings booked for next month to start to put together the business plan. So I think that very much is top of the agenda of things that we're progressing next. I think there is precedent that we have had permission from NCC to use field for various events in the past. We've used it during the summer markets, the food festival. So there is precedent for us asking the owner of the field to have permission to use it for town events. So I don't think that is a new thing. So I think asking to use the field for an event is not a new thing, and hopefully NSC will look favourably on that. I think we're also conscious that we could very well get very close to June or even beyond before NNC make a decision about, see Councillor nodding over there, whether or not they want to give us the field back. So I think realistically, if we're going to try and do something for the June beyond there, we need to start planning it now. So we can't wait for.
I wasn't trying to prevent it. I was just saying.
I'm just going to quickly draw two people into the floor. Paul, you want to say something very
Yeah, well, I was just going to say, I mean, really reiterating what Jerry is saying. The reality is, if you want a nice party, you start sooner rather than later. Irrespective of whether NNC aren't going to build flats on there by next June. We would like to have a party on there. I'm presuming they might all pop up every night. So the reality is we'd like to have a party irrespective of what happens to the field. So they're two separate issues. One is we'd like a party, and this would be a good place to hold them.
And very quickly from the floor as well, Helen, you have insight.
Well, not really massive on this particularly in terms of having the field transferred. But I would say you absolutely don't want to get the two things bogged down together, because then you might, we at NNC might mission a request for using the field for the Jubilee, which I suspect will be an easy ask. As to the case for the field being transferred, personally I'm very supportive, but it's something we're still in the stages of obviously assessing all that we have and how we should be using it in totality. And so I just think we don't want to bog down one thing with the other. So I agree with the best to do them separately.
So we're happy to progress with that. Do we need to write a letter? Or?
Yeah, but also, are you happy to take the responsibility of the public liability for the event?
Can we consider that for what you wanted to put permission?
Yeah, and because there's also the case if they turn around and say no, which they could do, perhaps we should have it on the next agenda just to see what happens, because then we've got to think potentially about another site to have it.
Yeah. So can we put it on the next agenda item?
But in the meantime, I can write them.
Brilliant. Thank you. Do we need to put councillors' names to it? Does that add weight to it, or?
If it's like we've booked it before, you just get a form, fill it out, send it on.
Brilliant, thank you very much. 216002, to receive Tom Hurst-Love MP's response, and obviously the response by MP, there's a motion. Just take the word to get handled. Response to OTT letter about handled doctor's surgery and consider the next steps. We've seen the letter, we've all read it. Do you wish to do anything more, David?
He's asking whether we wanted to push further. I think he answered that has to be yes.
Okay, that's fine.
Simple answer.
Yeah. He says, I'd like to raise your concerns with NHS England and the NHS Cambridge and Peterborough Clinical Commission Group. So, is everyone in agreement with that?
Yeah.
Everyone happy?
Can I propose?
Okay, do we need to vote?
Well, I've already gone back to him and said.
That's fine.
Well, I thought
Great mind reading.
I just thought, rather than wait, I don't know, 5 weeks or however long it was.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you very much indeed. 216003, to consider a request to install a defibrillator off Blackpool Road at George Pub. This we think has come from the first responders, and we're not being asked for funds or anything, just to support it. And obviously we've supported lots of these around the place. As Heartstart told us last time, they've done some good. I was involved in an incident a couple of weeks ago where we were asked to go and get the defibrillator ready at Picarthy, and yeah, it was nice to know it was close by. And this whole northern half of town is a long way from the defibrillator. So the George seems a good location for the northern half. So unless anyone has any grave concerns, I think we should go back and say, yes, please.
Well, how do they put in surgery?
But there's in and there's outside. I've got a list here actually. There is one outside at the surgery. But that's still.
But the more they have, the merrier.
If you're looking at Foreign Decree Road, the surgery is a fair old.
Is there a possible site a bit
Further
further
north,
north? Because
exactly.
they are, that's
That's
very
what I mean,
close.
it's either
Yeah.
George and the surgery,
George
it's
is
the
very
running
far.
distance to me.
My understanding from Emma, I suppose, is that's what they've asked for. They then go.
Yeah,
talk
that's where
to
they
George.
think, that's where they would
I
like.
think my event was 11:30 at night. It was dark. Having somewhere that was illuminated
It's a reasonable distance.
was good. So, and if we can come up with a better location.
Yeah, and I think it's having the electricity as well, because you need to be able to feed into the electricity.
As a public building, it's probably the only one that's left. But I think we're happy to support it. Is that right?
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Somebody wants it in the house.
216004, to consider request from the RBL for the flagpole memorial bench and approval of traffic wardens for the Remembrance Day parade. Are these all for the Remembrance Day, or is the flagpole and memorial bench?
Well, what they'd like to do, I mean, the pole that we have the bunting attached to, and then we have Christmas lights attached to, normally comes down in between, so that that pole isn't up when they've got the Remembrance Parade. But now they want to put a flag, and they want to see if we can adapt that so that it can. They could put a flag up I think it's 2 weeks before. But I'm not sure whether we'll be able to or not, or whether we need to have a completely separate flagpole. Because we need the ring that's sort of, I don't know, just down from the top that we attach everything to. But Lisa was going to contact Zephyr Flags in, is it Islip or Thrapston or somewhere, just to see if there's anything that they could do with it. Or if not, then we might have to consider having another pole, which is a flagpole.
Okay, and a memorial bench.
Yeah, we've already got one, I think, in the
There's one in the
marketplace.
market.
Yeah, and so they're considering another one, and they just want to know whether we're happy. And then the other thing is the traffic warden, which we normally do.
So we can approve the traffic wardens,
Yeah.
that's a known entity. The other two strike me as a bit vague at the moment. Or can we
Yeah, I don't know.
consider
Did this
those
come
also?
to? Did you talk about it at the States?
No,
Oh,
I just looked into the paperwork, I
There's
can't
no
see anything,
paperwork,
no.
so
yeah, I didn't really have it. I just had this come from Lisa, but I thought perhaps you'd already talked about it at the States. That's why it come here. Oh right, okay.
Should we put it on the next estate's agenda rather than?
yeah, it's next week. Can the state still approve it? Are we happy to nudge it onto the state?
I mean, yeah, if you can approve the
We
traffic,
did the traffic wardens.
do the traffic warden.
So I'll propose that we have traffic wardens as normal for those that weren't here last year. It's 2 hours, 3 hours, or it's a couple £100, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it was about 125.
Well, it makes a big difference.
Yeah,
But it does make a big difference.
Yeah.
And they patrol the streets beforehand and chase cars away, etc. So I'm happy to propose it. David's happy to second it. We're going to vote on that. Traffic wardens, fantastic. Thank you very much indeed. And if we move the other two to the States next week, that would be great. To receive an update on the scheduled work for the new cycleway on Blackthorn Road. Is this me? It might be me. Well, I'm not sure I've seen the email, so I don't think we do that. The email suggested that at the moment, and I spoke to Sarah Balmer about a few things to do with this as well. At the moment, Northampton, I think, are still waiting on a formula for approving capital projects. And this is a capital project. So until the system gets approved, we can't get the cycleway underway again. even though the money has gone into the pot.
Yeah.
So there was some talk of hopefully November things being approved, I think, so maybe the cycleway will come after that. It's frustrating. And also I've raised today, which I think hopefully David's seen, that the new ghost turn into the proposed development of Cosstock Road seems to eat a large amount of grass furniture, some of which I think might be the cycleway. So hopefully the planning committee can look at. No, it's all right, but it's an interesting bit. I'm not sure. In case the new cycleway was in dug up to be able to go a right turn. Hopefully that won't happen. But there we go. So that's outside our hands, and I think it's outside everyone's hands. 216006 to consider a request for a pavement licence for business in Angle. I think we've all seen the paperwork for this. This is now at Coffee Town. Thank you very much indeed, gents. Any questions, comments? Beans, sorry. Is that beans?
Yeah.
Oh, right, sorry. Right.
It's just, he's not going up straight, if you get a licence, you won't let it be doing for ages.
Yes.
So what's a licence?
I was wondering something.
That's what you're saying, there's only got something misplaced, they've misplaced the
They're just
licence.
tasty because I know that.
So it's just to continue
Mm,
what
yeah.
they have already.
Continue what they're doing already.
I thought the pavement diagram was a bit big in the coffee town. This is not at the coffee town. I was about to go on a tape measure last night. Do we need to do anything with this then?
If you've got no comment, then that's fine.
We're generally happy for the status quo to continue. Fine, lovely. 216101, receive report from Q&A session with Councillor David Howes, Rural Community and Localism Councillor. This was last week. Emma, you saw this, didn't you? And I think, Rupert, did you?
Yes, indeed, I attended, asked some social questions, and Council House gave very satisfactory assurance.
Excellent.
Certainly formally, I have the impression that Council House has drawn the short straw to be at the receiving end from the concerns of all the parishes. I did privately consider that really, we at Ireland Town Council, we know exactly who to contact in the North-North-East matters, direct to Helen the most important matters, any particular concerns, and our clerk has contact with the officers. Nevertheless, our clerk persuaded me that frankly, it's a good idea to work jointly with all the parishes. Otherwise, who knows, sometimes we might need friends and not have them. So, a useful session, and I think things will get slightly more streamlined, and Council House will be slightly less put upon acting as a receiver and transmitter of everybody's concerns.
I think that idea of working together seems really important. There's obviously lots of the issues that affect Angle affect the hinterland as well.
That's right.
That's something that's been coming clear with the rural forum work we've had going on. It was interesting looking at the report talking about planning. When we met with the planners in here last week, they were saying that there's been a 48% increase in planning applications since the time before COVID, and they're 3 officers down. So their workload's gone up significantly. And then traffic, of course, and transport's an issue that we're aware of. Do we get the feeling that these are going to keep happening in a more formal way, Helen?
Yeah, they're going to have one for Wellingborough and East Northants area, and then another one for the Kettering and Corby area, because I think combining the two together would be too large. So we would be jointly with Wellingborough.
And I suppose the question on my mind is, does it replace our rural forum, or do they sit hand in hand, side by side?
I think it potentially will do, unless there's anything, because I can't see the Rural Coordination Group meeting when there is a formal meeting which will be held by, Councillor David Howes will be there. I can't see the point in us trying to get Northants councillors to come to our meeting when they're holding them.
But unless we just want to meet beforehand. David?
I mean, my only fear, in a sense, is that the whole point of the Rural Coordination Group was to be very much focused on the villages immediately around Arundel. What is emerging is something that's significantly bigger than that. And it may be that it then won't fulfil the objects that we hoped the RCG would produce. Whether the RCG could be some sort of feeder into that process, I'm not sure, but I think possibly it's something where we ought to try and have another meeting with the RCG and discuss it. It may decide to wind itself up.
Derek,
Only has one job.
I'm just going to agree with David, I totally agree with your view there. I think, and I'm not being part of the LCG, but I do think it's, from what everything you've reported back, it's a very valued forum at the moment. And I think if we can, as long as the parish can continue to support it, to go to this meeting with a coherent voice from our and surrounding villages is going to be far more powerful than just turning up without knowing what our agenda is.
I was at the Zoom meeting, and I thought it was very, very focused on the way that NNC works, which isn't at all what I thought your group, David, wanted to do, which was to identify specific issues and ask them to work on those with us. It was really about processes, wasn't it?
But I think that was the introduction. I think having been to these meetings before up with Wellingborough, I think you have an agenda and you can raise things that are concerning you, that in your area, that will go onto that agenda. So that's how I'm assuming that's how they'll run. There wasn't any structure to that one because I think it was an introduction. I think they were keen to start these meetings up properly. And I think we should see.
Yeah, it sounds like a two-stage, two parallel approaches the way. Val?
One of the things that concerns me, if we to work with Wellingborough, is that we're very different patches, and the big problem we've always had, even in the old days of the before the present new setup, is that we're very, very rural, and our needs are rural, and they're not the same as a patch like Wellingborough.
But it's the Wellingborough area, and there are rural areas. There are rural areas within the Wellingborough area, and that is what this is. I think we should give it a chance.
Oh, yes, I'm not necessarily.
But I suppose the point is they should both carry on. If the parishes and we think it's worth doing our thing, and then that feeds into the larger thing, that seems a sensible approach. Brilliant. 216102 to consider a response to North Northants draft corporate plan consultation. I've seen individually, have you all seen it now as well? It's very pretty.
There was quite a lot of criticism at the meeting of it, saying that at the moment it's just so top level that what's really the point? There's not been much detail around how parish and town councils therefore fit in to the way that NNC is going to work. And what I remember Councillor Howe saying was that, I think it was the woman, I've forgotten her name,
Kerry, yeah.
She said they're very conscious of that, and the next iteration of it will include that kind of thing. And it seemed to me that would be the one that would be worth commenting on.
So there's another iteration coming.
Coming out. Is that what you don't agree with? I mean, that's what I thought.
That's also my impression. Kerry, who was Councillor Howe's senior officer, she made it clear that what was put in front of us at the meeting was merely a first draft.
Yeah.
There'll be a further draft with specific objectives and I think some time limits. Assuming these are not met, or even if they're accelerated, they become in further iterations of the plan. So it's work continuing in progress.
Definitely.
Can we just check with Helen, is that?
Yeah, so the draft we saw was absolutely a work in progress. What we didn't want to present people with was a document all shiny and gleaming and basically complete and then ask for people's views on it, because that's not consultation at all. That's basically presenting people with a final document and then maybe tweaking tiny bits of it. So we absolutely do want people's views and opinions right from now as we develop it. But it is absolutely a high-level document. The way we see it is, or where it's been described to me, is that we will have mother and daughter documents. So there'll be the high-level plan, And then there'll be detailed daughter documents, if you like, that sit within, below all of that, which will flesh out all the detail. But the high level document will be, here are the headlines, this is what we want to achieve, and this is how you'll be able to assess whether you've achieved it or not. Then you'll find the other documents that sit below that. So I hope that that's helpful. And it really is a very rough and us as the executive we've basically set out what we want it to be, and then it's gone to everybody else. It's going to be coming back to us once you've all had the chance to say what you want to say. And I would say that, I have my own criticisms of what I've seen of it so far. So please do feed in everything that you think of it, because we genuinely do want this to be something that we develop with you and other stakeholders together.
Okay. So, do we want to do anything now, or wait for the next iteration to?
Wait for the next iteration.
We can all individually add our thoughts to it on the
Yeah,
consultation, something.
Yeah.
So, have a go.
Have a
That's a
say.
sort of detail. 216201, report from me. Just a couple of things I wanted to pick up on. I went to the ODA meeting a few weeks ago and gave out some stickers. I had to give you some more stickers, but they're not here yet, so I can't, unfortunately. They're new and improved after comments from the meeting, we've got bigger lettering, etc. But my thanks to the ODA for the work that they let us do them and vice versa. I sat in on a number of staff appraisals so far, and it was great to see how happy everyone is working at the council. Everyone was full of praise for Emma, which has been great to see. And there were some really constructive things came out of it, which is fantastic. So it was a great pleasure to be part of some of those, and I got some nice coffee on the back of it. I went to Abbott House and terrifyingly went from thinking I was standing at the back of the room to giving out chocolates to people who were as surprised as I was to be awarded. I'm now on a Twitter feed, apparently, but never mind. One thing that was amazing, I suppose from my point of view, was how welcome our attention to them was. The staff felt that they'd been through it a little bit the last 12, 18 months for obvious reasons, and they were just grateful to see people around. Helen was there as well, and it was really interesting talking to them about the problems that they've had as residents around it and as people working around them. So I said that we would keep that connection going on a regular basis.
Did you ask me at all about the planned new care facility?
I didn't.
No,
I wasn't the case at the time.
No.
And the chief operating officer was there, but at some point. So it seems like we've got a path between here and there, and we should keep that contact going.
Yes.
And even as far as just putting a version of the advertiser thing on their notice board, which is a paper copy. So,
my wife is a carer at our house, and she spoke very well about you.
Meeting over.
She said it was. She said they enjoyed it a lot.
Yeah, it was nice to see, and I think I was suddenly aware, as a resident of Amble, that's easy to forget Abbott House is there. They're residents of the town as well. So it was, I was terrified, but it was good. And there were a lot more chocolates than there were people coming together. We didn't get any chocolates either. Meeting down at Snow Meadow, which was great, and hopefully some stuff will come up in the States next week. But we met with the Wildlife Trust and the Snow Meadow Wardens, it was great. And then the meeting that Rupert, you were here, some of it, Van, you were here, with the Northern House planning team, looking at the Cardstock and Stoke Lawn development. And it was a really positive and interesting experience. You said it was the best meeting you've been with the planners. And the view seemed to be that they were getting Vistry to go back and look again at their development and come back with better plans. That was
The whole plan.
yeah, the whole thing,
Oh.
which was really positive to see. And Helen, you were distantly in the meeting in the corner of the room. Great to see. I've also put some stuff about communications there, the Love Amble website, 2,500 independent users, which is nice. The social media report from OBA, and I think we're hoping to improve the geographical spread of that. And that's sort of the idea of the, I've got my car sticker there. I put my car stickers in my cars, but unfortunately they've both got tinted windows in the back, so it's really hard to see. A bit of a design flaw, but never mind. And also, I've done videos on Facebook about the transport survey that are awkward to film and awkward to advertise. But I'm hoping that in the next few months we can all do a little bit of video work as well, just to get our names and faces out there. Or maybe be willing to sort of be a bit more public facing and go out and stuff things. I think that's what the message from the other housing is. It's nice to be seen. So I'm going to go and sit a bench at somewhere at some point when I know what the plans are, despite Paul's advice. And maybe give some stickers out. But I think it's something we should all be aware of.
Stall on the market.
Stall on the market might be good. And then lastly, there's that little thing using the next door social media for polls. That question, one that we'll come to later. Then the clerk, Jamie, is that a question?
No, sorry,
No.
no.
And then the clerk's report came in two parts.
Yeah.
Being busy with staff appraisals, etc. And then there was the crime report. What was the first half of that as well?
You should have had that with correspondence. Yeah, it was just further down. Yeah.
To approve the amended constitution for the museum trust. David, you want to say anything about this?
There's not a lot to say, we need it done, and, I mean, it's a long document to read through, but, we just hope that you'll be able to approve it today. There is a link between the council and the museum, which is not recognised by everybody, actually.
Well, I mean, I'm aware that there are councillors on the.
No, but the reason behind it is okay. There is a big link between the two, which is why there's been a little bit of an issue about financing things recently. But the links are, the Arundel Museum was set up by Arundel Town Council, and in so doing, we got the courthouse. And the only reason why we got the courthouse is because we set up the museum. So because of this, it's very much linked, and that's why there's 4 councillors on their executive committee. So it's over time things get forgotten, but we are really close to the
I was well aware of the links. I'm just a bit surprised that it's down to us to approve.
Well, it's only probably a tick box exercise to make sure that you've approved it, and then we can then approve it back at the museum. So it's not saying that if you don't approve it, we're not going to survive, but it's more a sort of polite request to say, because we do things, and we try and do things a little bit more together. I mean, I've only just joined the museum, so, I've only had 1 meeting. So I'm a bit of a noddy on that.
David?
Well, just perhaps to fill in into the blanks. The original museum trust document, which was drawn up more years ago than I care to think about, by yours truly. At that stage, the format was that there were 4 councillor representatives, the mayor, deputy mayor and 2 elected. The mayor was automatically the chairman of the museum trustees, and there were 4 organisations who appointed the other trustees. Unfortunately, not all of those organisations survived, so that of itself necessitated some tweaking to the document. But now the intention is to make the museum trust a charitable incorporated organisation. Don't let's go there, it's a line we've spent months looking about it. But that of itself necessitated a requirement for a new constitution. Well, bearing in mind that this council is in effect 50% of the museum trust, obviously we have a vested interest in the new document just as we had under the old one. Perhaps one of the most significant changes from the point of view of this council is that instead of us electing people to serve on it every May, we elected people to serve on it this May for the entire 4-year term of the council, assuming we don't get extended like we did with COVID. Secondly, it's no longer the case that the mayor is automatically either A, a trustee or B, chair of the trustee. As it happens, the trust did vote a councillor to be its chair. It's a bit like musical chairs, actually. David just failed to sit down. So he was the one who ended up as chair of the organisation. And the constitution was largely worked up by former councillor Roy Sparks.
How's that?
So he did quite a lot of work on the drafting of it. And I was certain that we looked at this and actually approved it. And then when we came to try and find any minute that said that we had, we couldn't find one. So either my memory was playing me tricks or somehow we failed to perhaps fully record the
I
minute.
think it failed to be recorded.
We discussed it in any other business. That's the only time it was
Maybe that's what
because it
happened.
came to a
We
late
got to put that on in
meeting.
order to
And
formally do it.
And there were going to be further talks, and then it never came back to this.
Can I just?
No, you're allowed to get the please.
The one in front of us from 2020, is that the one we're being asked to approve?
Yeah.
And it was already, by the way,
So there are two councillors here who aren't councillor.
it's already been submitted though to the,
Right. And one of the charity
this is the
trustees
problem.
is no longer with us. Is that right?
Already been submitted to the Charities Commission.
yes, it's already gone.
Do we
It
just
went,
have- do we
it
just
went,
have to approve that we've
from what
already approved it?
Diana said,
I think
this is why you need
It's a
to,
kind of retrospective
need to have it
classification.
approved.
It's a bit like the retrospective club.
Because you're quite right, we've got councillor
Found it,
Robinson,
wasn't it?
who isn't a councillor anymore, councillor Sparks, who also isn't a councillor anymore.
So what I ask is, can you retrospectively approve this so we can proceed?
So I'm
I'll
happy
second
I'm happy to propose that we have seen this constitution and we approve that it was approved.
So can somebody who's not a trustee to say,
Yeah, Paul is happy to do that, and we're all happy to recognise that it may have been approved in the past.
I think so.
Lovely.
Thank
Those
you.
very much indeed.
I just
We can now go to the meeting tomorrow night.
Yeah. Dates and people.
It's a complete mess up.
Okay, 216204, an update of the transport study. This is Paul King, but he's not here. So it's going to be Luke or I. He's looking at me. He thinks I should do something. Basically, it's.
Because we've heard you a lot.
Yeah, we have.
Oh, heavens, I haven't even say that, because.
apart from going to
So, my mind's also a bit further down the,
Luke
Yeah.
and Paul and I met last week before the drinks, obviously. And we talked about the way forward. We've had a good response, not brilliant, but a good response to the request for the survey around town. 170 people. There's some clever pictograms and word maps there talking about roads and cycling and stuff like that. There's obviously some pretty strong feelings about walking and driving and cycling and animal on every possible side. And it's great, it's fantastic. Paul's given a lovely background there to the last survey and work that was done in 2010. The essence, for me at least, of what we're talking about is we want to be able to go to highways, North Northants highways, and you've got a good relationship with Sarah Armour, and say, here's what we would like North Northants to do to our roads and cycleways. But without data, they can't do very much. So we're sort of doing the consultation through the survey. What we'd like to do now is to take it to the next stage and ideally go back to TPP, the people doing the 2010 project, and say, please, could you redo the specs, remodel some things, come up with a report that we're sort of broadly happy with in the next few months, and then sort of publish that and heading towards the next town meeting and say, here's what we think is a good template for the next 5 or 10 years. And then we'll, people say yay, nay, we twitch things around, TPP, remodel it, whatever, and then we can say to highways, here's a good plan. Now, whether they take it up is nothing we can do, but if we have the data that backs it up, which we don't have at the moment, then we can hopefully move things on. So the 2 recommendations at the bottom there, that we're happy for the study to move on to stage 2, and we as a council are happy that we approach TPP to look at costs and details. Give us an idea, the last survey in 2010 cost just over £12,000, and that was funded by East Northants. Well, North Northants will be so happy again. We can ask our councillor to ask us questions. Is that yours? But I suppose, what are we actually asking today?
Yeah, there's two recommendations at the bottom, I see.
Yeah, it is. And to approve the next course of action. So I suppose we're asking if we as a council are happy that we take the next step, which is to go back to TPP and say, can you fit us in? Can you give us a quote? And then hopefully in October we'll be able to say, yes, they can, it's going to cost this much, and we can decide what to do then. But without the data, it's pretty.
Can I propose that? That we do the second.
I'm very happy to propose it. I'm happy to second it.
And nothing further will happen without us knowing the costs, then,
Absolutely not.
beyond.
No, we're not.
At the moment, asking if we have permission to go to TCP and ask them to sort of redo the work they did in 2010. And hopefully then they'll be able to compare what's what. And it's simply to go and talk to them. And obviously we can spend.
We're going to vote then.
Yeah, are we happy to go ahead with that?
I'm proposing it.
I seconded it.
So votes.
Fantastic. Thank you very much indeed. That's everyone.
But whilst we're just on transport, if everybody please could fill in the bus strategy question.
Yes, I was going to mention that at any of the business, yeah.
I did it. It's very
Yeah.
sensible. We got quite excited about it. To and from. I want to go to lots of places.
Yeah, I know, it's badly set up.
But it was-
Are you okay for us to sort of put that out on our website and
please.
promote it as well?
Yes, please.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Push it out.
Yeah, quite a few people are
Social
spreading it
media.
on social media, but the more places we send it, the
Yeah.
better. And can we stick on notice boards as well?
Yeah.
Digital notice.
To receive a response to the letter sent to the, not the chief executive, but Councillor Smithers, Northwoodlands, and to consider any response. This is the one that I sent saying we need help from planning and transport, etc. As I said, we've had a good response from planning, and hopefully we can get a good response from highways. Do we need to consider a response at the moment, or just steady as she goes?
Steady as she goes.
Fine. 216206, we touched on this back in June or July, to consider declaring a climate emergency. We had a very good presentation by David earlier. Ask the local MP to support the climate and ecological emergency bill in Parliament and promote having done so through our publicity channels. I know people have lots of different views on this, and I think I'm going to invoke our standing orders if that's okay with everyone. And just saying that I'll ask everyone to sort of speak once if they want to speak, and then we can vote on the actual agenda item, because I don't think we're going to solve climate change as an issue tonight. So, Luke, it's your.
Okay, I'd have to go first. As you know, all of you who I hope know me will know this is a really important issue to me, and something I stand firmly behind. And it seems to be an important issue for the people of Oundle. The presentation tonight, I had a letter of 100 signatures put through my door this afternoon, garnered by Camilla Sherwin and her groups, which I've got brought with me. And a lot of people seem to want to get us to choose to support the fact of a climate emergency. And what I really particularly liked about the presentation today was that climate management is going to be achieved by choices, actually, choices by people like us. What a climate emergency declaration will do is we'll make a public announcement of our intent, really. Our intent to initiate at our own liberty, let's not forget. Our hands aren't being tied as to any timetable that we don't set ourselves, on our own timetable to reduce our emissions as a council. So it's our chance to add our voice to the growing number of councils that have supported this. It also sends a message to NNC, as was raised earlier. It sends a message to Westminster and to COP26 in November, and the message is that it matters to Oundle. And let's not forget the climate and ecological emergency bill. We want to get our MP to support that, because that will essentially enact the Paris Agreement in law. And the Paris Agreement was an extraordinary agreement by all nations to come together on climate change, and we need to make it that. And so I think finally it's worth me saying I would be here supporting this bill, whether there was great public momentum behind it or not. And I think there does seem to be public momentum behind it, but I'll be here whether that was there or not, because it matters. It's right to support this. It's our responsibility to do so too. So
Excellent. Thank you very much, Luke. I was going to go around the room if I can. Jerry, any?
What did I get this down?
No, we'll go around the room. That's the
Am I
start.
going this way?
Yeah.
Oh, right, so
Right.
they introduced it, I beg your pardon.
David.
Nothing to add. No, very eloquently put. I take the other hand though, and just to give you some idea, that I have had an electric car for 5 years, and I've had solar panels for 10 years, and we recycle, and we water recycle. So I'd like to say that I'm happy to do my bit to try and reduce the footprint that I have, or our family has. However, the thing about the climate emergency is that there is a big push for it, and it's understandable in some respects. But I'm sorry, I came back to school, and I did a lot of maths, and I did engineering maths, and I was an engineer for 5 years. And one of the things you're taught in sort of mathematics is when you get an answer, there's a good way of testing your answer to see if the answer you're getting is actually sensible. And that's how you test yourself when you're doing exams and all that sort of stuff. And some of the issues that come about from climate and this sort of climate emergency just doesn't pass the sensible test, to be honest. And most of it is based on models. And we've had a lot of issues with models in the recent COVID crisis, where it's been obvious that some of the modelling, if not a lot of the modelling, have proved to come out as being false or giving false information. Models are only as good as the information put in. So it's ego, garbage in, garbage out. So we have to be very careful, because most, if not the vast majority of the disaster information we're getting are predicted by models. And that makes me concerned. And if the temperature, the other thing to say is if the temperature is going up by 1 degree, I've just spent a week in a country where the temperatures vary between 36 and 40 degrees in the summer and minus 15 degrees in the winter. And they don't seem to have a problem with living in that environment. So, yes, I'm more sceptical about the fact there's a climate emergency. And I would not agree that we feel that there is a climate emergency. Having said that, there's been a lot of information today to counter that claim. But I would say that, in my view, there's no climate emergency. It's called climate.
Thank you very much. Val, anything to add?
I think there is a climate, I'm not saying an emergency, but I've travelled myself and I've seen global warming and all of the other facets of it. My only concern is that we are councillors representing the town, and I'm not sure what the town actually thinks.
Yeah.
That's my slight doubt.
It's fair enough. I think there's a strong opinion amongst a strong minority, but I think the interesting for me on the next door post, I put the various options up, expecting it to be sort of 25%. And one of them was don't care, and I thought that would be about 25%. It was 3%, and it was 63% saying you should do it straight away, which was much more positive. And I know that's around some,
Yeah.
but yeah, no, very valid point. David?
Yeah, I mean, I'm also a climate change denier, but I do feel that it's a little bit like gesture politics, this. I think that the town council would be better employed in getting its own house in order, developing its own full detailed plans for how, at the level at which we operate, we do our bit, and we do our bit to get a message over. But I think that this is the sort of thing that should be debated at the next full town meeting, and hopefully we have a proper one. And we get a flavour for whether the town feels that we should be spending our time on this kind of thing. Because I think it may feel that this is not what local politics, frankly, is about.
Fair point. Did Mark and co touch on that when they were saying it's a useful tool for us to leverage that? We had a conversation at a meeting all about renewable electricity, which we've switched a lot to. And yeah, maybe this is the tool to leverage that. Rupert?
I think my best approach really, as I'm in town council, would be while taking full account of the general framework that Councillor Jones has suggested, we begin by, as Councillor Chapman has put it, putting our own house in order, concentrating on detailed work on buildings, while keeping in ongoing contact with what's happening at Northants and at central government level, because that's what they're for.
Thank you very much. Liz?
I don't see how, I mean, I absolutely agree that I'm only really interested in what it is that this will mean Oundle Town Council will change. However, the proposal as it's written here doesn't seem to preclude us from doing that. In fact, I'm rather surprised that it doesn't ask us to do that. In my view, it doesn't really go far enough, and we should be doing what David has outlined, and that we can quite happily adopt it as it's written without, I mean, effectively, we're not putting any onus on ourselves except to write to the MP. And some publicity, but that's almost inevitable because we publish the minutes, I mean, to what extent you go with publicity.
We can contact Northants, but they're ahead of us already.
Yeah, so I don't see one precludes the other, and it's actually the actions afterwards that are important for me.
Paul?
Yeah, mine is, I think, we have an opportunity to put some markers down. Whether we declare the climate as an emergency is one issue, I think. But I think opportunity to look at, somebody mentioned about at our next meeting, the town meeting, but in the meantime, with the communication strategy, linking it, so that we get the town talking about it. And that helps the town. And then building on what we can do. I think in one of the presentations it mentioned something about Oundle School, what it could do around using electric cars. And our very own vehicle is a vehicle that is
Those of
electric.
us that were there last year.
There was a lot of
So,
talk about our vehicles.
And we can influence
We lost.
and we can influence hearts and minds within our school maybe through the town because we're going to set the standard.
But what it's
And
worth,
with NNC.
just for Handel School had a big check on electric vans last term. I think that's the plan to move to those.
So I'm just saying.
Yeah, no, so
back to it.
and then, so we could be ahead of them.
And I'm with Liz, you know, we're not moving away. We're not moving away from what it actually says. We're actually informing the debate and we're writing to Tom and saying, look, we've got an issue here. We think you should be on board. I was very convinced by what Mark and David showed us earlier about being able to use this as a tool to leverage ourselves and to make decisions about plans and buildings, etc. It was interesting talking to the museum staff a couple of weeks ago about how one of the lights of the corridor was permanently on. And why don't we have a sense of it? That's just a waste of our money. So, this is an excellent way of using a tool. Saw a brilliant sign in Kensington the other day. 20 mile an hour speed limit with the transport survey, it all ties in my mind. And they had 20 miles an hour in Kensington is legal. And the phrase they used was it's safer, it's greener, and it's cleaner. It was all the banners outside Harrow and beyond, Hall and beyond. Just that idea of being able to tie up transport and everything else we want to do, and cycling and walking and open spaces. With this, to me, seems to make sense. But I think it's important we don't use it just as a bit of green wash.
Can I just have a check?
Have a second. Listen. I'm also going to ask if that's all right. Am I allowed to Jamie and Brett their views? Jamie, do you have any?
You first. To be honest, I would need to do a bit more research and reading of what has been proposed. The only thing I might add, with regards to the transport and to electric, etc., is that as an Oundle resident, time and time again, I'm finding the facilities in Oundle that should be in Oundle and not actually here. I'm a non-driver, and the amount of times I've been asked to go to do bloods in Kettering, in Peterborough, and all of these places, dentists, I'm now having to go to Peterborough, and that for me ties into, as a community, how do we support green initiative, and particularly within the transport. It's the only thing I would add.
Jamie?
From my understanding of the proposal, I don't see any reason why you wouldn't do it.
Very simple.
Can I make a proposal? Because there is about words.
I think he's got.
We've got the proposal already.
Yeah.
Yes, but if we could change it.
Amend it.
Can we just have a vote?
Yeah.
If we could just.
Can we just have a vote and see where we are, because time is really.
No, okay.
And I know we've spoken at this at length already.
Yeah.
Okay. Can I just see who would then therefore, well, do I have to get a proposal in a second?
Proposal in a second.
Do you want a proposal? I will second it. So do we have those who would like to vote that we declare a council climate emergency in Arundel? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And those against? 1, 2, 3.
Well, I would suggest if you could change the words, you'd probably get a unanimous vote for what you want. Just changing the word.
Can we do that? Have we got that?
Well,
Yep.
you've technically just voted on what was there.
You need
So-
an amendment to the proposal.
You carried it.
You can't really,
I'd be a lot happier if climate emergency.
you can't really now amend it because you've just proposed.
I've said,
Move on.
You can't
All
change
is
it
abstained.
to
No, that's
sit
fine.
outside.
Okay, fair enough.
Sorry, what did you?
I've said.
You abstained.
Fine, we shall crack on. To approve the date for the annual town meeting on the 28th of April 2022. Do I have any reason? This has been driven by me wanting to put it in the advertiser and the print.
No,
The press is literally waiting till 11 o'clock tonight when I say it's 3. So, just so we can start flagging and building to it being a bit.
Yeah.
So is everyone okay with that? It's
Very
very
much.
it should be, according to me, so we just need to approve it.
Let's do that.
Brilliant. We okay to use both, we're okay. with
No, that's fine,
No,
just to
fine.
do that
I
date.
received a letter from Blooming Animal, which I've now found about the tree trail. Seems pretty standard, we're probably quite happy with our trees put on the tree trail. Anything else, any complaints? Lovely. To approve OTC member attendance for Northants Camp AGM on the 2nd of October at 1 Angel Lane. Pretty exciting. Do we normally extend?
Yeah, well,
Normally, yeah.
yes, we do, yeah. We tend to have a representative and I attend. I'm away this time. So it'd be best if you have 2 councillors if you can, or at least one, so you've got a voting presence.
Thanks for that, Paul.
Are you going, Nick? Liz, are you going?
I'll go to
You know, I
Anyway.
almost put it on my platform agenda and then I thought, you know what, I don't want to go. So I didn't.
I might be able to go. And I might be able to report back on that.
They are, it's, you know, a good thing to go to. I mean, I've been I go every year. This is the first year that I'm actually
That's
not.
what they always say, isn't it? I go every year.
Can I just ask what that actually is?
Yes, you can. You should know in your DNA. It's what does it stand for? It's the local.
It's
council.
it's the sort of local council body that we subscribe to and we go to for advice, but they also feed down advice to us. We get training with them, and it's the Northamptonshire branch of.
Basically, whenever we get a problem, we ask them and they tell us.
I can say that I had my initiating back to when I was chancellor. They did it was on Zoom, but we had an NCAL training.
Flying Start,
And it was
yeah.
very good, really good. So
Which I will offer
you get
to-
a lot of good information from the NCAL.
To go to Hanford Council on YouTube.
Yeah.
Right, well, their version of NPAL was running the meeting.
Yeah, yes, that's a good.
So I'm happy to put myself forward, subject to being free.
Yeah, I mean, that was actually, in the end, that was my objection, that I couldn't commit to the 2nd of October.
I might.
Oh,
Do I need to have a vote on it? Because it's approved.
But if you go, what you'll do is you get 1 voting delegate and 1 non-voting delegate. The clerk is normally the non-voting delegate, and the council is the voting delegate. But obviously, if nobody goes and it's just me, then I have to be the voting. But I do think, you know, it is useful to go. There'll be a lot of other councils there, and you'll see a lot of other people.
So do I need to take a vote on it here?
Just, I think if you could get 2 people to commit, I mean, I thought if Paul King's here, he might go because he's probably been before.
I've got you.
I don't know whether Val's been,
I've been many times
yeah.
over the years.
Yes, no, I'll happily put myself forward if people are happy that I can go.
I mean, what you'll vote on is you vote on the, their sort of executive director committee, the appointments to that. You vote on the fees, these are the sorts of things that you get vote on.
There's refreshment.
I know, I saw that. You're right. 216210. To consider approval of Christmas market and what restrictions may be imposed. We're talking about December the 4th, I think, for this.
Is that Mr.
Yeah, I've just got a few points from Lisa. What she wanted me to ask you was, are you happy for her to do that, like for us to do the whole thing, so get the reindeers, Santa's Grotto, the fun fair, all of the stalls, using the QVH, which could, you know, it's going to be hot and steamy in there and very, very crowded. And also the Rotary Club, they would like to put their sleigh next to the reindeers, if you're happy with that. And she, the management company Crown that Rowan used for the food festival, Lisa's going to speak to them to see if they could help us. Are you happy for her to speak to them, to get them to come in? And because we think potentially we may not have enough volunteers.
So we're not approving any funding of that yet, or we just...
No, we haven't got a, no, she's hopefully she'll have that for estates next week.
Okay.
But it's just, you know, if you don't want to speak.
David?
Well, I think we need to have a decent Christmas market, bearing in mind the events we've had on. So there's a chance to relaunch it, so I think, yeah, I'm happy to go whatever the suggestions are, because we've got to go big.
Anyone got contrary view?
Well, only partly. I'm all in favour of the Christmas market, but although I was gung-ho with a seated pantomime audience, I was slightly more nervous about it. It is extremely crowded in the QVH on that day, really hot. Even with the doors open, I don't see
We're concerned about the indoor QVH.
what we just talked about as a possible mitigation levels for a seated pantomime.
Somebody who's never been, what happens in the QVH?
We have indoor craft stores a lot, and it's.
I know, I can imagine.
Yeah,
So the numbers, so the door.
Yeah.
The numbers in, the numbers out.
So
There's a solution.
Yeah, but this is where we need volunteers, and this is the problem.
Are we happy therefore as a group to say that yes, in theory, we say yay to Christmas, and we'll ask the Estates Committee to look at it cautiously next week?
Please.
Is that
Yeah.
fair?
Yeah.
So
I mean,
let's get it away.
Some of the advice from Adam French, the Environmental Health Officer, was if you don't feel happy, then don't have them in the QVH. Don't have indoor
So that
stalls.
might be the cautious approach we take.
Potentially think about spreading out your stalls outside a bit more, because we do have gaps, but they are bang, 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 right. You know, we're talking over 100 stalls.
So if everyone's generally happy with that approach, we'll push it on to Estates
Tuesday,
Committee.
outside.
December the 8th.
Yeah.
What is the date? What date is it?
The estates.
What date?
It's the first Saturday in December,
December the 4th.
4th, something like that.
Okay, brilliant. Cracking on. Financial matters 216301 to approve bank reconciliations, balance sheet and budget for July and August. I'd like to tackle on the agenda, it's got the monthly bank balance of the Unity Trust Bank as pound sign.
Is it?
Yeah, there's nothing in it. It's all gone.
The bank balance is £456,003.86.
So it's got a
That's good news. I'm going to go and
Because
approve
Paul
things
has gone
tonight.
on holiday, so I
He
wondered
has, I was
if
getting
it's
worried. But I did check yesterday and there was money in that. So are there any concerns or qualms about the bank reconciliation, balance sheet and budget? It all looks as we expect. Can we get a proposal for that, please? We need to approve. And a seconder, are we all happy to put that through? Brilliant, thank you very much. Payments, a proposition to make all the payments for July 2021 with respect.
Yeah.
respect
So we already
that
looked-
one, respectively.
We already looked at it,
Yep.
Julie, and you.
That's fine. So do we need to vote on that? Because it's a proposition. Can I get that? Can we get one? Jerry, Liz, let's second it. Fantastic. Vote. Yeah, brilliant. Thank you very much. Payments for August, proposition and scheduled payment as presented. This item are paid. Again, I think nothing scary there. Jerry proposes, Liz seconds, everyone voting on that. Lovely. Thank you very much. To approve the receipt of the annual governance accountability, which I saw that I scribbled over, so that's exciting. To approve receipt, do we just need to say we've received it? Or do we
Yeah, and the same for this, the verification councillors will have view only on the bank account, if you're happy for that.
Absolutely, sounds great to me. And again, thank you for those, all in his appraisal, and obviously got to have a double check on things. So he was very appreciative of that. 216306 to consider grant application from chat. And clearly a couple of people are involved. Makes a very convincing case.
Chat, just the definition of chat for our new council.
Or should we ask someone that runs the chat? Paul or Val, because you tell us what chat is.
Counselling,
Youth
that's what it stands for.
It's youth council.
It's the youth counselling
It's
service, and it's throughout quite a large patch in the north part of the county, and based in Arundel, started it in Arundel. Again, it was started in partnership really. I think the town council promoted the starting of it. That's how it worked.
Yeah.
And we go into schools as well as doing counselling in our own premises in the courthouse.
It's something that's rather precious to the council, actually.
In fact, I can come in and support what Alice said. It's face-to-face advice, unlike an effort that NCC did remotely some years ago. And it's by trained counsellors, not by amateurs at all. And it's very highly regarded. In fact, at one stage, I think I was East Northants Council's minder for relations with Chen. And I've got a very high opinion of the dedication of the committee members and its staff. It does very useful work, so I strongly suggest that we approve their application.
So it's an application for 3,500.
I did ask Emma to send me the grants list, and this is very much in line with the sort of amounts that we've given year after year. In fact, I think there was nothing last year, but and we're well within our overall budget for grants, so.
It seems foolish not to. I think they also do a very good job. The only comments I had when I looked through it all was whether there's a website.
You need to get to the very confidential.
I was wondering whether we should have
relationships
some,
we have.
the phone number down at the escape, the phone number of Barnstaple Court or something like that. And that might be something we can talk about in the future. And the other thing was, it's in the application about the fact we started putting their rent up. Why we changed the rent? But anyhow, Paul.
On the communication side, I met with them, I remember now, 44th summer, my sort of initiation ceremony. And one of the big things they wanted to do was promote themselves, how they do it, and we talked about social media. So that's certainly an area of their business that they were trying to improve. Not to sort of say, oh, come on, we've got problems, because there are lots of young people that are using their service that are referred from schools and other departments, whatever. But it's certainly, they did feel they wanted a profile, but it was a case of they probably didn't have anybody that was within their group that was probably a bit savvy. That's not necessarily.
Can we ask Rebecca to?
But we've got people on our comms groups who may actually be able to assist them in terms of having that answer.
I'd be happy to do that.
Excellent news. So we're asked to consider, presumably we can vote on this at some point. So if I get someone to propose, please vote with. Luke got there first, David got there to second it, and we all have to approve the grant application.
I declared an interest.
She declared an interest, so that's effectively unanimous. Thank you very much indeed.
Sorry, can I just go back? I've whizzed through all the finance stuff and I didn't get any approval on the annual governance and accountability return.
Well, that was with the gang.
Do we need a vote on that?
Finance gang.
Yeah,
Okay, sorry, I think just we need to receipt.
did you do it without,
No,
did I
We need
hear?
to do a vote.
Right, what did you say about it? I didn't
We
even
just
hear
said
anything.
we approved it, and
Oh.
that was fine.
Right,
Same with
okay.
the internal control check, I thought you said you needed a vote, but I can do a vote.
I didn't even know that we were there, so
Okay, apologies.
you were whizzing through a bit. You've all
Sorry,
approved,
just
if
worried,
you've
it's
approved it, that's
9:30. I
fine.
told her last time for running to 9:30. So, we've approved the grant application, do we need to vote to approve receipt of the annual governance and accountability return?
Well, if you like, it's just that's what our internal auditor and our external auditor will look for.
Okay, so can we please have someone to propose receipt of the annual governance accountability? Thank you, David. Seconded by David. We all have to vote on that.
Thank
Very
you.
much. And do you want us to vote on the internal control checklist change?
It's okay, no, that's fine.
That's fine, just check. 2163, a quote of £2,645 to refurbish the basketball court that's the rec as recommended by the Estates Committee, but this is above their £2,000 budget. So this is work that's been asked for by many of the users to remark the court. There was a request, I think, to re-tarmac it. That's probably a bit expensive. Is that fair, Liz? It was, I was watching the meeting online due to my.
Yeah, we've given lots of options, and this was the one that we felt seemed appropriate for the amount of use that we think the court gets, and appropriate to the, the effect on the whole of the field. If you start putting up, the fancy fencing and what have you, this is just a little bit of fencing and won't sort of doesn't have that impact of the open space and other things that people might want to be doing.
So it's a bit of TLC backwards.
Yeah,
I'll second it.
Brilliant.
Sorry.
Hang on, do we need to?
I've just got a couple of things to say.
Okay.
Just to say that this is going to come out of the recreation ground repairs and maintenance budget, of which we have £5,000. We've spent £1,888 of that, so there is funding left. But just to say, you've near enough taken out.
Yes, and that's written on the thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Was it on the form? It says it's coming out of a budget code 5131, £10,000.
It's coming out of budget 5130.
Okay. On this one it says 513, which is the youth fund.
It's got a different number.
It's got a different number on the form. we've got.
10,000 code 51.
It's Lisa's put it down as the £10,000 youth.
Right, we've got it down as repairs and maintenance because that's basically what it is.
Okay.
You're repairing and maintaining.
Okay.
Is that out youth projects?
It says youth activity.
Yeah.
Okay, that's fine. But so that's basically the R&M budget for the rec gone.
That's gone, man.
Well, near enough, yeah.
That's fine.
So we're still.
And before
I mean,
we
if you want to take it out, that project, I mean, unless you've got, I don't know what other projects you've got.
Well, I was just thinking that's what the Estates Committee thought they were doing, taking that amount
Right,
out of
okay.
£10,000. I didn't pay as much attention to the fact that it said youth activities, I will admit that.
I think from watching the meeting, it looked like the decision was to go with that because the skate park, the bigger spend on that won't happen for a while.
Right, okay.
So it's a part.
So it's an improvement rather than just a repair.
So you want it to come out of 5131?
5131.
Upgrade.
Yeah.
That's what I, yeah.
And just before we vote on it and approve it and all that, there is a choice we have to make about the backboard. The Estates Committee has recommended option A with a weird blood spatter thing going on, as opposed to the weird other graphic. Are we all happy with that?
Yes. Just everybody see it. That is A, that is the other one.
Yeah.
Which one do you want?
So we're voting
That's
to
A.
approve it with that.
Still proposing.
Liz, are you still proposing with A?
Let's
Yeah, I like that.
Yes.
And I'm still seconding with
Are we all happy to
I like
vote
that.
with A from the?
AA, option
I know.
It's passed. Angela.
Right, sorry, could I just have a proposal in a second? for
Liz
that?
proposed. And David said.
David second.
216308 to approve subscription cost of £35 for Northamptonshire Acre. This is the one we said we'd suck and see to see how it was. David? Proposed. Lovely. Anyone got anything different to vote on that £35? Thank you very much indeed.
Sorry, I'm not getting, I got the proposed, but not the seconder.
David and David.
You're all whispering amongst yourselves and I can't hear you. Just to let you know that is coming out of the memberships budget, of which we have a budget of 8,240, and we've currently spent 2,500.
Okay. Northamptonshire Acre was, there's a bit of paperwork we've seen. They're a bit like a camp, but they're new, different, a bit more rural. So again, there's someone for us to talk to about this. We're looking at them and they're looking at them until the next financial year comes round, and this allows us to use their services.
Okay.
So I suppose we need to use their services. 216309. David?
That's too expensive.
Right.
So I'm going to get it.
Shall I tell you what it is first?
You can tell us what it is, and I'll tell you the price.
This came out of a conversation from the appraisals, talking about collaborative working, which we're all doing lots of now, and trying to get all of the staff and also the councillors, if they want it, an introduction to Office 365, OneDrive, Teams, all that sort of stuff. The idea was that everyone, including all the councillors, could get access to an online training system for 1 hour sessions, either over a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks, to get an introduction. And then hopefully David and other people know what they're doing. We could design our systems to stop thousands of emails with PDF attachments, etc., and use things as a lot of us are now doing collaboratively much more successfully. But apparently it's too expensive.
I think it.
So sorry, have you actually gone to SharePoint then?
Ian has been speaking.
So you're doing the training before you've actually made the commitment to SharePoint? Sorry, I haven't understood what way around we're doing this.
Okay, my understanding is we have access through our Blue.
We haven't turned it on yet.
Well, I think all the staff do. Apparently.
Staff have it,
Yeah.
councillors don't.
No, and the idea of this, and I thought it was a good idea, is to try and get some professional training to show the capability of it.
No, I think it's good.
And then the staff could start saying, okay, we have access to it, which we're not using. Now we know how to use it. Now we work out what we want to do with it, and we can then improve things and take things on once we know. Because at the moment, no one can say what they want because they don't know how it works.
Yeah, it's the usual thing. We don't know. So what we do is we do an art of the possible. So what you need is an art of the possible. So what is actually possible, then I need training in these areas. This doesn't do art of the possible. It just does training. So you've got to know what SharePoint is. You've got to know what these things are.
Yeah.
Well, that's my understanding is that's very much what the
It's standard industry, but
well, they work with Cambridge City Council.
oh, I know. But the art of the possible is what leads you on to know what you need to know. So all I'm saying is, if I could come back tomorrow, see if there's another price, to give you a competitive price. I just think £5 for an online course. Which, I mean, we're not a big organisation, so we charge 250 quid for that. Yeah, it's a primary school. We're effectively a primary school. So we charge primary school 250 quid. I mean, this is like secondary school price. It's like what they would charge for training primary school. I mean, 500 quid, it's up to you. I mean, if you want to get started and go for it, fine. It'll be fine. It's just that I think they're overcharging. It's industry.
Well, it's up to the council to decide. I think the advantage of these guys is they're local, they're based in
catering again.
but they can also do it in a couple of weeks' time, which means that you guys could get up and running with what you start thinking.
Yes, sorry, what day? 'Cause I am on holiday in a couple of weeks' time.
Whenever.
Right,
We talked
Yeah.
a week or two ago, and they could do from October the 10th onwards, but
Is this face to face, is it?
online,
Online? Okay, yeah. Well,
because then everyone can do it as and when they need to and safely.
and then it's probably, if it's online, what, face to face training? Or is it online courses that you run?
I'm not doing it. It's online.
Well, there's different types of online. There's online where you go online like a Teams meeting and they're training a Teams meeting.
That's what it would be.
If it's that, then that's reasonable. If it's online where you go and run a course that's pre-recorded and you actually follow the course through, then that's the different thing.
No, it's run by someone called Conan.
Well,
He's nowhere near as
I think
exciting as he sounds.
I think then give it a try. So it's not a huge amount of money.
It struck me as reasonable value. And again, they work with Cambridge City Council and Cambridge Someone Else Council.
But I would suggest, if you don't mind, that you ask them to do an introductory course that's called the Art of the Possible, which says, this is what it will look like in a year's time. And if they could do that for us, then that would make the course much better, much more easily available for everybody. It's what everybody wants. They don't want to know about, if you go in, just a quick story, it won't take long. We got very excited because we heard about Office 365. We actually went to Microsoft HQ in London to get training, and they bored us. We were so excited about this thing, and they got into SharePoint. That's the first thing they did. And they killed us, and we're all experts, we're all trainers.
I've spoken to these guys about my experience, very similar to that.
Well, it's making me over.
And they're very keen not to do it that way.
Yeah, so Art and Possible, you mentioned that.
I'm sure.
If they want to talk to me, I can give them an idea what it is, and that would be the best way to start the training. Trust me.
So, are we happy to, I suppose, approve the idea of training office staff and any councillors that want it?
I'm happy to make a proposal.
David's proposing it. I'm happy to second it. Are we okay to vote on that? £595 from the training budget, which has £1,648, and I think I'm happy to vote for it.
Any other recommend?
Well, abstaining, I don't know if.
That's fine.
On the whole thing.
Abstaining, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 4. Abstaining, against?
I think you can get all that training online on YouTube, so.
No,
it's
not
not
really.
easy.
It's not really.
Everybody's
Doesn't
cracking on, I've lost control. Consider a request from QBH Trust for financial assistance. That is based on the previous meeting, but there's no need for that. Is there? So 216401, proceed to the planning committee. We've got the minutes. Do we need to read, see anything from
Can I
the
just mention two things? I'm sorry about that, given the time, but I think it's worth just noting. Planning meets in August. At least it should have met in August. The first time I've ever known it, we were not for it. We knew in advance we weren't going to be. Happily, we had decided to amend the terms of reference, which gave the chair the permission to essentially make the comments on behalf of the council. What I put into preparing notes on each of the planning applications wasn't wasted because I then used them myself to actually make the recommendations. Which is why there is no minute of the August meeting, because there wasn't one. However, one of the applications that I commented on was listed building in West Street. The one next, in fact, the Old Town Bookshop.
Oh, yeah, I know.
And seeing what was on the portal at that point, I was rather horrified by what seemed to be being proposed for listed building and recommended an objection. Subsequent to that, the applicant got an extension, filed a 65-page heritage impact assessment, which he himself had put together to be an expert. It was the best document of its kind I've ever seen. Totally changed my mind. He came along to the meeting and using the powers that we now have to reverse a decision if we get extra information and it becomes clear that we should. That's exactly what we did. So it's just worth noting that actually some of the flexibility that we built into that committee recently worked. A, because we were able to cope with the situation in August, and B, we were able to be flexible and look again at an application in September. I'm very confident that the decision we made in September with regard to that whether it was the right one. Other than that, I don't think there's anything else, unless anybody's got any queries.
That sounds good. With that experience in mind and COVID continuing, do we need to make similar adjustments in terms of reference for other committees to make that flexibility work?
It's something we might want to think about, but not now.
No.
What I would just observe is that we've now co-opted 2 councillors. We are pretty tight on the planning committee. So if anybody has an interest in planning, oh, thank you. I don't know what you let yourself in for, but
they're good meetings.
Emma.
I would advise you not to change all of the other terms of reference to allow delegated powers, because your other committees, you're spending money and you're approving expenditure. With planning, there is no expenditure involved. It is just our view and it's not a decision on that application. So I would advise you not to do that to your
and with planning, we're up against the timetable. We
Yeah.
have to get a response in, or there is no response. Whereas if we have to delay a decision because a committee can't get for it, 99 times out of 100 it's going to be critical anyway.
Just,
Can I just add something to what
About-
you said? Sorry.
mine was just relating to scheduling meetings, probably an upfront on planning, but, scheduling meetings during the peak holiday period for some is difficult. When you're not actually in the county or probably in the country during the holiday period. I'll just throw that in if it's an issue.
Well,
And it
that's why
affects
the full
us all.
council was
And it
meeting
affects
in
us all.
August, but
Yeah.
Unfortunately, as we've heard, a 48% increase in planning applications.
Yeah.
The world doesn't stop just because we'd like to go on holiday.
Well,
Although
take issue with
you
that,
said
but-
that it was the first time you've known it, it's not the first time over the years that that's happened. It does seem to me that people don't seem to turn up for planning meetings. We do have, we're always
Mr. Mayor,
just
point of order.
over the line.
Can I just make a point? Not turn up for a point of order on a planning meeting.
So
I think it's an
one
issue.
of the planning issues might have been also in August. I couldn't make it to the States meeting, but I was in lockdown, so COVID had its impact as well.
Oh,
this
yes.
summer, so.
Yes.
Let's move on. 216402 to receive a letter from Blackthorn Parish Council regarding FY06 contributions. This is about Crossroad Road development. It says on the card, a platform.
It's really for information, just to say Blackpool was pretty upset. It highlights a problem with the whole section, 106 which is that the councils are not involved. Nobody asks either Amble or Blackpool for that matter what should be done. It kind of imposed. And in doing it, despite the fact that a large part of that development is in Blackthorn Parish, Blackthorn got them, frankly, nothing out of it at all from what was being proposed. So Blackthorn was pretty upset. Obviously, I wear 2 hats here, but it did strike me that it was pretty unbalanced, and hence the letter that's been sent. As to what will happen, I'm not aware we haven't replied yet.
They haven't
No
replied.
reply yet, okay.
When we have a reply, no doubt Blackthorn will tell you what it's on.
At the meeting we had with the planning officers, they said that the section 106 had been finalised, didn't they?
I think that's what
Yeah.
they said.
But we were consulted because that was when, as part of our as part of our neighbourhood plan, we had got the cycleway, and they have included that within the section 106 within the section 106 agreement.
No, I don't. In a sense, I've got an issue with it as far as I was concerned. It just struck me that wearing my hat as a Blackthorn councillor, it had been pretty hard done by, because nobody asked. what was needed, nobody thought about what was
Yeah.
needed. And it just highlights a problem with the system, which no doubt when we get the sort of reply, we'll get to it. I will then be proposing motions to the next NOC conference, and probably a letter to Tom Perslove as well.
Right, yeah, well, do let us know what the reply says. 216501, two Swedish issues to get through in 6 minutes. Receive a report from the Hub Working Party and approve next steps. Liz, this is from you, isn't it?
I hope that you were able to read my report and my recommendation, the proposal being that we do make one more attempt to try to run the hub as a commercial entity, but with a mixed remit of there will be times when it is available for community hiring and there are times when it's open as a cafe. And the trick is going to be how will we find the person who would be able to run that in that way. But the fact that you can already envisage a difficulty shouldn't necessarily mean you don't even try.
You give it a go.
Yeah, so we can give it a go. In the meantime, I think we're kind of letting people have it.
People are sort of using it. We've had a few
It's on the
people
calendar.
inquire about hiring it. I mean, are you, for like an ad hoc thing, are you okay for us to say, yes, you can use that? I don't think anybody's is at the moment, because I think they've decided to go with other rooms. But
So the Baptist Church chose somewhere else.
we've had a few people sort of show a bit of interest, but I think for an evening, when ballet's on and if you've got other people coming in, like for bridge, people are sort of put off to actually have a meeting in there. But we've had a few inquiries about it.
I think, you know, we talked earlier on about things leading onto each other, like the climate thing with everything based around that. I think if we improve the facilities here to enable businesses to do stuff here, like the AV and all that stuff, then that could lead on to people going. I think I'm very much in support of that idea. Give it a try. We need to. It's missed by a lot of people, but I think we can add things around it to help support it. So you want it to be self-support. You want it to be a business. It wants to be an activity area. And if we've got an activity area down here, then that will have an impact on the hub. So the more people that come here, the more it goes. So that's my view. And I think there's a sort of follow on. So the more we can make this attractive for various reasons, then the hub will be there to support those activities.
Rupert.
I agree with Councillor Fuller on this. One more try and see what it works.
Yes, I've always felt we should.
An unclear understanding that it's within our means, within our budget, and that MR Clark can reassure us that our staff are willing to cooperate and giving it a go. Well, would you not vigorously if that is the case, or say
Well,
otherwise?
I don't. It depends on what you want the staff to do, because
Right, in that case, could you bring it back to next council on the basis that we'll go ahead, or perhaps, if we could agree, delegate authority to ascertain and then report back to the mayor meanwhile. But my only real proviso is, okay, certainly, give it a go, but set a clear time limit for reporting back as to whether having given it a go works.
The limit I would want the council to set is how much money they're prepared to put in, because there is there has to be an absolute understanding it won't make money for the council.
Do we understand that?
It's not going to. And
there'll be costs.
There was definitely some confusion, it felt to me, hearing Lisa and Val talk about the history as to what people's understanding was previously. So I'm not prepared to go put another minute into it without that absolute understanding from everybody there will be a cost.
Well, it's a bit, can we suggest that we, if you want to do that, I think at this time of night, it's rather important. I think the hub is very important to a lot of people. And I would suggest that this is put into the next meeting with a bit more time to discuss it.
I am disappointed that we've had it at the very, very end of the meeting, we've all been here such a long
I
time.
mean, can we wait another, can we wait?
Yeah, easily.
Yeah, I mean, so,
Just on that question, we don't have any money in the budget for it.
No, we don't
No.
currently, and
So
I
we
appreciate
can
that's
agree with the
problem.
principle like that, but until the next budget cycle, there
Yeah.
isn't any money.
but then we can budget for it, we can.
Exactly.
So in other words, is this, don't want to spend too much time at the next meeting doing, but is this something we could try and put the flesh on the bones a bit at the stakes and come up with a cost? And then come back at the next meeting in October? Derek?
I'd just like to understand a bit more about timing as well, because at the moment, you're not generally open, are we? We're not,
No, that's true.
No, building isn't there.
the always closed, so.
I think it's difficult. I think you can discuss it a lot and you can discuss ideas and you can go, which is what has happened since I've been here. The key issue is the council's got to decide, are they going to fund it? Because it will need funding. It potentially won't even break even.
Yeah, no, that's fine. But we
So
don't have any
we've got
money.
to have a plan of exactly what you're going to have in there. It will mean potentially, what it will mean, you will need to take on more staff if you're going to pay somebody to run it. Because the staff at the moment can't also just go and run a cafe as well. So there's a lot that needs to be thought about.
Yeah, so
Which is why
I'm-
that budget cycle is actually perfect, you know, I don't envisage anything apart from these ad hoc bookings ahead of that.
No,
There's a lot of work, but it's just not worth it unless there's an understanding of a budget commitment at some point.
And that's something that we need to ascertain. I mean, I'm fully behind it anyway, so.
So I'm not convinced that Arundel with 6 cafes already needs another one.
There's none of this part of the world. Well, this is.
I know that, but unless we have a business running it, and I'm quite sure they would want to on those terms, we have to say to lots of people, we want to add to your rates by subsidising a cafe. And that's a decision that we probably need to decide on. But if we know what sort of cost we're talking about, okay, is it £3,000 a year on top of the budget or £30,000 a year?
Well, that's to be decided.
Well, is that something that the state should sort out next week, Liz?
I will continue then, yeah.
And thank you for your work.
Yeah, absolutely.
Indeed. Keep up the good work.
216502,
Lisa.
216502, a request from the solicitor regarding the tennis club land. Interesting and exciting. Does anyone have any views on it? There's 3 tennis courts onto the land, I walked past it today. No, it looks like there's built tennis courts on the land already.
Yeah.
Oh, is this retrospective?
Retrospective planning, and supposed to be retrospective redrafting of the lease. So that's the question, how the hell did it get wrong with this? And that's beyond me.
It looks like at some point a new lease has been approved, drawn up, something or other, and 3 tennis courts are on that bit of land, but it doesn't seem to be on the lease.
The fault of that would seem to probably lie with the solicitors who drew it up
Yeah.
at the time, and they should sort the mess out at their own expense.
So what are they looking for from us?
well, they asked me to find out
What
whether the tennis courts were on this land. Well, I went down there, and they definitely are, because I can't see where this piece of land is, and it looks like they've been there for a long time. And so they've got to amend the lease.
Okay, so we'll
Well,
send it
well,
back to the
redraft
lease.
And that's the request from them, is that the tennis courts are on the land, we can't use the land any other way, so just change that.
Yeah, we can't.
Do we need to vote on that, or do we need to?
No, if you're happy for me to just go back and say, yeah.
Yeah, choice. 216601, employment law update, received, thank you very much. And joint action group, East Northamptonshire area group North, correspondence.
And that's what I intend. And if you want to know some of the local issues about policing and the discussions we had, it's in there. There's an interesting bit about some of the traffic surveys going on in other parishes, speed is not the issue that people think it is when you actually look at the data, but we need to do that for ourselves now, and the next general meeting is occurring in a couple of weeks. And they're very good actually, aren't they, Mary?
Yeah.
There's a few interesting people.
2167, any other relevant matters for report only? Put them in the room very quickly, please. Great one, put a hand up, excellent.
I did ask, sorry, Emma, I had asked about Parsons Latham. So I am your rep at Parsons Latham, Parsons Latham's charity. I was made extraordinarily welcome, I have to say, and I've also attended it. And what I hadn't understood is that automatically makes me a trustee. So now I am a trustee at Parsons Latham's as well. But the thing that I most wanted to report back to you is that previously, the council has had an automatic right to a trustee there. They are engaging a QC, of course, to advise them on a new charitable status, and almost certainly the thing that will go is these we'll just have our friends as trustees, or we'll just have our town council, we've always had them, and they're going to go much more to a skills-based trustee. So that automatic association that we've had with them, we may lose. It is very dominated by ex-town councillors at the moment, trustees. It's a lot of them. But lovely people to work with. Absolutely fascinating. It was absolutely fascinating. So thank you very much for giving me that job.
Brilliant. Anything else to report at all? No. Thank you very much indeed, Helen, for your attendance. Very much appreciated. Huge thanks to Red and Jamie for coming tonight.
Yes.
Hope they haven't put you off the whole meeting.
Yeah.
5 minutes more than I was allowed to do. Everything's over.
Well done. Thank you. Thanks for that. Is there a resolution? Just there, you see that? You were saying about having to take you don't drive, traffic. I'll email you this bus and then you can complete that.
Yeah, no,
To help, because I think the more people that use buses, they're the sort of people that they need to hear from.
yeah, absolutely, no, and it's something close to my heart, so.
I'll send that to you. And also, I'll send